Recently, I discovered that Tectone provided an idea of a new game mode that is a replayable piece of content that can be added to Genshin. However, he didn't go into specific enough detail as to how this would look like in game or how it should be implemented, at least not to the degree that I would have liked to seen him discuss. He just said that it should be an endless floor after floor 12 that constantly gives you enemies to fight off with some randomization.
I don't think Spiral Abyss should end at floor 12. I feel like Spiral Abyss should be get to 12 to get all of your rewards, and then you have an infinite floor where each floor starts getting 10% harder, or X amount, 5%, 10% harder, maybe a spike every now and then with randomized elements that allows you to progress infinitely until you hit a wall. And that way you can test your account by seeing if you can get past the next wall and the next wall and the next wall, kind of like a survival wave mode.
His idea for a reward system also seemed quite bland.
Now, I am a firm advocate in making leaderboards, but leaderboards just for ranking, and the rewards from the leaderboards would only be free-to-play accessible rewards, like, Mystic Enhancement, or maybe you could do a little bit of more on some EXP books, but nothing crazy like Primo Gems. That's what I would do.
With that being said though, I think his concept idea is good. A game mode that could be replayable and to really test how far your characters can be pushed would be interesting. I want to expand upon it in a way that could be actually implemented, more specifically the randomization, reward, and resolution aspects. First, it must be kept random to keep it interesting. Constantly fighting the same enemies or floor variation would be an endless bore fest rather than endlessly fun. Second, it should increase in difficulty and provide an increase in challenge with each floor that would inevitably lead to a player's demise no matter how strong their characters are, or how skilled they are, or if they just happen to throw a bunch of money at the game and are a whale. Lastly, it must have an enticing reward system that would make players want to play it. Many people don't care for the Spiral Abyss because it's not rewarding enough. They just consider it to be a headache. In order to make the floors intriguing, the amount of enemies and the types of enemies both need to be random. For example, in one floor you could be up against 20 Hilichurls and a Rune Guard, and another floor you could be up against 2 Magu Kenkis. A way that this could be done is by having the monsters be chosen at random from a set pool. This means that in every floor, you'll always be fighting different types of enemies. However, the amount of enemies is just as important because you wouldn't want a system that forces you to go up against 4 different bosses on the first floor instead of going up against 4 Abyss Mages. To fix this, every monster should be given a weighting, and every floor should have a capacity. This might get complicated, but I'll try my best to explain this. We'll call this weighting capacity rating. The higher the rating, the more space the monster takes up and the more difficult the enemy. Think Clash of Clans army camps. Barbarians take just 1 space and are very weak, while dragons take 20 space and are very strong. For example, a Hilichurl could have a capacity rating of 1, something similar to a barbarian. Rune Guards would have a capacity rating of 5, something similar to giants. Lectors, 10, and a hypostasis, 20, so on and so forth. Then, each floor would have a capacity limit. This would be like the army camp itself. For example, floor 1 could have a capacity limit of 20, meaning the floor could have 2 Rune Guards and a Lector, or just a hypostasis. While floor 20 would have a capacity rating of 50, with 20 Hilichurls and a hypostasis and 2 Fatui agents, or, theoretically, because these enemies would be randomly generated, you could have some extreme scenarios like 5 Abyss Lectors. This means that you may get spikes of difficulty while you progress through the floors, keeping you on your toes because you don't know what kind of enemy to expect and need to create a team accordingly that could handle all sorts of monsters. And that's what makes it fun. Going into every floor not knowing what to expect or what challenge awaits is what keeps you engaged and excited. One floor you're wiping out hordes of Hilichurls, and the next some Magu Kenki grabs you by the cankles and it ends your existence.
Yeah, boy.
It's important to point out that players would need to know beforehand what type of monsters they will encounter so that it's not completely unfair. It wouldn't be very fun to go up against a Pyro Abyss Lector without having a Hydro unit. Now, I know I just contradicted myself, so allow me to explain. In order to combat this unfairness while also keeping the floors unexpected, the pool of monsters would have to be given to the players before they enter the floors, but also have enough monsters in the pool so that each floor is diverse and not the same as the last one. Currently, Hoyoverse does this with the current Spiral Abyss. They show us the enemies before we go into the floors. This would allow players to be able to expect what monsters they might be able to see, but not know when and how many of them you will encounter, because the pool would be so big. Additionally, every 4 weeks, or however long the rotation would be, these monsters would change out for new ones. I believe there is enough monster variety in the game to achieve this, especially since we will only get more and more monsters as new regions come out. Here's an example of what I mean. This would be the first rotation cycle. Then, 4 weeks later, it would look like this. So on and so forth. Next, let's address difficulty, or how a player resolves and ends the run. Capacity limit would increase every floor that you go up, so that each floor you're going up against more and more monsters of higher difficulty. The capacity limit could be either exponential or an arithmetic sequence where each floor increases its capacity limit by a set number, like 5 or 10. Alongside this, the monster level should also increase as you go up the floors, and because it is endless, you should go past level 100 monsters. This means that the higher up you go, the monsters deal more and more damage while also taking less damage. Each floor can be timed and grant you less time as you progress through the floors. However, I'm more on the side of there being no time limit, since it could end up feeling too similar to the Spiral Abyss that's just endless. Instead, players should keep going until they quit, or die trying. But ultimately, it is important that at some point or another, the player meets their demise and their run ends. Which leads to the last point, rewards. Tectone mentioned leaderboards and rewards, which was honestly a terrible idea he gave. I'll explain why his idea of leaderboards are bad in another video, so subscribe if you want to see that. The rewards he offered up were things like Mora and Enhancement War, which is utterly boring and unrewarding. I know that because it was connected to his leaderboard idea, he said that the rewards should be free-to-play accessible, but you can have free-to-play accessible rewards without them being bland. Like I mentioned before, lots of people don't participate in the Spiral Abyss because they feel the rewards are not enticing enough and the headache does not match the rewards. These rewards should instead be things like gold gemstones, billets, crowns, or a bunch of other core rewards that can help progress your account. While they would be difficult to obtain, they would be worth your time and would be fun and challenging to get. It is important that these rewards are linked to your account's overall strength so that the next time you fight in the Endless Floors, you're stronger than you were before. These rewards would also be at specific checkpoints. Maybe at floor 5 you only are rewarded Mora because they are easy and anyone can get to them, but floor 20 grants a billet, and floor 35 grants a crown. Now, I'm not sure what the correct pacing of these floors would be, but essentially the higher you go, the more rewarding it should be. At least, that's how I would like to see an endless mode added to the game. I think Tectone is in the right, and that more people need to be giving specific ideas so that people can rally behind them. I'm not saying that my idea is perfect, it certainly has flaws, like lag issues if you progress far enough, or not explaining the pacing, but I think it's well defined enough to have some actual weight to it. But honestly, I just thought the idea was cool and wanted to take a stab at it, even if something like this might never ever be introduced into the game. Feel free to disagree or agree and criticize my ideas. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I haven't thought of an outro yet, so have a good life. A game mode that could be replayable and to really test how far your A game mode that could be replayable and to really test how far your A game mode that could be replayable and to really test how far your Floor 20 grants what MiHoYo has done with the current Spiral